Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of our Lightning Interview series. As always, we want to make these sessions interesting and interactive. So please do introduce yourself on our chat channel. Tell us where you're joining from and what you do. And of course, please do feel free to add your questions to this conversation because today we have a very interesting topic. Our guest today is Python programmer expert and instructor extraordinaire and author Matt Harrison from Metasync. And we will be discussing how AI is transforming the programming profession. So whether you are a programmer, want to be a programmer, or just curious, I'm sure you have lots of your own insights. So please do share those with us. But first, I want to, as always, go over a few quick items. So we've quite a few interviews coming up. We also have another interview coming up with the team from Google. And we have few new announcements, one being the AIX Summit is back. That's going to be co-located with ODSC West 2023 in San Francisco, both virtually and in person, running from October 30th to November 2nd. And AIX is essentially it's our business and innovation track. So do check that out. And we also have quite a few free webinars coming up as well. So you want to dive deep into those, quickly grab those QR codes or take a screenshot, and really hope you can get a chance in your busy schedule to join us for a few of those. But the main news is, as mentioned, ODSC West is back. And I was just talking to Matt a few minutes ago before this. It is a very heavy on the large language model, prompt engineering, generative AI side of things, and I'm sure you may be tired of hearing about all that, but don't you worry. This is very much a hands-on practitioner-focused conference. So if you haven't had the time or haven't had the wherewithal to get started and hands-on in some of these models and prompt engineering, this will be the conference to do it. We are also announcing our preliminary schedule next week. So we already have about 85 sessions already announced, both in person and virtual. So when you have a chance, do go check that out. And also we have our a major round ending. So I think this is a good chance to get the best price as well, to check out whether it's AIX, ODSC, or one of our training passes. And our guest, Matt Harrison, will actually kindly be joining us there yet again. Matt will be doing about a training session on machine learning with XGBoost, very important part of the toolkit there, as well as idiomatic pandas. So hopefully that was insightful. And let's kind of delve a bit into our topic today. So as you well know, a lot of attention has been paid to tools from OpenAI, such as ChatGPT, GPT 3.5 and 4, as well as tools like Midjourney and similar Gen AI tools. But I really think the bigger story here is about which company can offer developers the best AI code assistant tools, because we're definitely entering a phase I would call the AI code assist wars, where OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and many other companies, we hear from the VC community, are competing for this AI code assistant tool, because the stakes are very high, because the way artificial intelligence can write and rewrite software will have huge implications for the tech industry and everyone else by association. Because you really got to acknowledge that the transformative power of AI to craft and revamp software isn't just a technical leap. It's definitely a paradigm shift with profound implications. And today, our guest, Matt Harrison, will help us explore this seismic shift and the repercussions on the world of programming, whether you're a seasoned coder or just embarking on your coding journey. So Matt Harrison is a Python instructor extraordinaire and consultant with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. Matt is the founder of Metasync, a company that provides training and consulting services on Python and data science. He's also the author of several books on Python, including Guide to Python 3 and Learning the Pandas Library. And you can find those both on the Riley platform as well as Amazon. And what I love about Matt is he's always been a passionate advocate for Python and data science education. He believes everyone should have the opportunity to learn these skills and is committed to making them accessible to everyone. And along that lines, he's presented and taught tutorials at many conferences, including Strata, SciPy, Scale, PyCon, OSCON, as well as, of course, ODSC. And as we saw, ODSC West coming soon. And he's also, based on our previous conversations, a strong believer in the power of AI to augment work and learning, and is excited to see how it can be used to improve the way that we learn and work. So without further ado, let's welcome Matt Harrison to the show. Matt, welcome.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
So Matt, wonderful to have you, and we're going to get a little more details about your background, but I want to get straight into this topic after my long preamble there. So how do you see AI changing the way programmers work?
Yeah, so I think programmers are going to use AI as an augmentative tool. Currently, and this is a theme that I use a lot. My brain's not very big. It only has so many cycles in it, so much space in it. You often hear the number 7 plus or minus 2, which is how many pieces of information you can remember at a time. And then there's studies about, I remember I heard back when Google started offering like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, people were like, oh, that's so weird. Like, why would they do that, right? That's such a cost for them. But, the numbers came out that programmers only had some small fraction. It was like, I think it was like 2 hours of productivity a day. And so the thesis there was, if we can extract even like an extra half hour of productivity from these folks, then the dinners completely pay for themselves, and it makes sense if we can extract that extra bit of work. And so I see AI sort of doing a similar thing, not that it's giving us free breakfast or dinner, but what it's doing is it's allowing my brain to focus on more of the deep work, the things that take a lot of mental capacity, and offloading more of the menial tasks and to the AI. So I'm not having to worry about those or spend a lot of time on those. I can give a concrete example. So I was working with a data set that was country happiness data just the other day. And so it has, for every country for the past like 10 years, it has various reviews about, how their social network is, how happy they are, GDP, those sorts of things. And I wanted to compare this by continent instead of country, and I didn't have continent in there. So I had all these countries, like 100 different countries, and I know how to write the code using like pandas to go through and assign each of those countries into a continent, and I could certainly do that. I didn't know that there was existing code that was around that would do that for me. So I could do that code. It would probably take around, I would say, an hour, and it would just be sort of copying and pasting or making sure that some countries that I'm not familiar with are in the continents that they are. However, I just told an AI tool to write that code for me, and in 30 seconds it had written it. Now, the code was not completely perfect. It did have some issues, but because I'm familiar with pandas and the code that it wrote, it wasn't hard for me to fix, and it was much easier for me to do that. In all, it might have taken like 2 or 3 minutes to do instead of an hour. So that's for me, like, that makes something that I might say, oh, well, maybe I'm not going to do that, or maybe I'll do that after lunch. I can just do that immediately, and huge productivity increase.
Matt, and no, I definitely agree. From doing a little bit of coding myself, and I think your point on productivity is a really salient one. It's because it's always surprised me how long, because I have a similar job experience length as yourself the last couple of decades, how long programming has kind of almost been a cottage industry, an artisanal industry where no two sets of code written are the same by the same programmers, and productivity has always been an issue. And how much time I spent when I was a program manager around standards and with debugging code. So productivity is, I think, a key point here we'll dig into more as well. And well, look, I know it's a big question, but those are some great examples where you outline some opportunities. So going a bit deeper in that, what are some of the other opportunities you see where AI presents for programmers, but also what are some of the biggest challenges for programmers with AI code assist tools?
Yeah. Maybe start with some of the challenges, right? So currently, one of the challenges that I see a lot is hallucinations. So if you understand how these models work or have a high level understanding of how they work, basically they are given a bunch of data and they make connections about the data, and then you give them some more data, and the challenge is predict what data comes after that. And so they're going to use their statistics or their underlying model and do the task. And oftentimes they will do something that might seem perfectly plausible and sound realistic, but might not be. And so we call this hallucination. So generally hallucination is a pejorative term that means something negative, but in fact, all these things are is hallucinations. It's just saying complete what's going on here, and it's hallucinating. But oftentimes it is correct and useful, and sometimes it's not correct and useful. So understanding when it's useful and when it isn't is a huge challenge. Another issue is context length. So that's this notion that I'm going to send in the input into this model, and the input has some length, and then it's going to, again, complete the task, make predictions about what's on there, but it can only remember some part of the input. So like, for example, with ChatGPT, the interface is this chat interface where you're typing out and having a conversation with it. Well, if you input large amounts of text or input into that, it might forget what it was doing previously. So you might say, like, I need you to help me proofread some content and some code, and you paste in a lot of content, and then it might help you, and then you say, oh, now try and do this, and it comes back with something that just doesn't really make sense, even though you're thinking, well, we were just proofreading this, but now it's just spitting out sort of silly words at that point. So that notion of remembering the state and remembering what it's doing is a challenge with a lot of these current projects. Another issue that I see is just the interface overall. We like Chat GPT. One of the reasons it's popular is because it presented this chat interface, which is okay at sort of being okay for kind of most things, but it's not great. And when I'm doing deep work, I kind of want something that doesn't distract me, and like having to jump over to another website, paste something in, copy something else in, like generally I'm writing a prompt and then I'm pasting something else in with that, and then waiting for the response, and then copying and pasting something out of the response and putting it back into another application. That interface to me leaves a lot to be desired. And we do have things like Copilot or whatnot that integrate some of that experience into our editors, but I think there's a lot of improvement there. And then another huge challenge is just resources. These models are expensive to train, they're expensive to run, and I would love to have a local model completely trained on like every email that I've ever sent or all the code that I've written, and just have it be trained on that. Right now, that's not really available to the general masses. That's available to very few technical elite or people who have money and resources to do that sort of thing. So those are some of the challenges, but again, those opportunities of basically taking low-level menial tasks, automating them, offloading them, those are huge. A lot of programming is tasks like that. So I think someone who's getting into programming or data science or sort of the data engineering side of that, I think it would be silly for them not to start looking into these tools and understanding how they work and leveraging them if possible.
Yeah, and just digging a little deeper into just one of those challenges, the code model hallucination, as you well pointed out, is very different from a chat model hallucination. Are you concerned about one area more than the other? Because when I first started using Copilot, I found it was giving me a lot of deprecated functions and libraries, and that's gotten a little better depending on the context. But now people have started to pull back a little bit. Concerns about security vulnerabilities, but then one can argue, well, you can use other code models to find those code vulnerabilities. And then the resource train is always a big one, as well as the the development delays that checking for hallucinations can kind of incorporate. And what's interesting too, like I find that when I'm doing examples of code, it's much better because these tend to be simpler ones.
Certainly, you bring up a good point, which I neglected to comment on, which is, I guess, just security and protecting your IP. So a lot of these public tools, right, send your data over the internet. So some companies may be more comfortable with that, some companies less comfortable, and then within that, there's also the whole notion of like, oh, are you sending over like private stuff like keys, that sort of thing? That could be problematic. So that's something to be aware of. Again, right. We've seen in this past week like enterprise versions, on-premise versions that might get around some of that. As far as like the quality of the code coming out, that is something to be aware of, like the hallucination. Again, you have to consider, what these things are trained on, and where the input is coming from. So it's sort of garbage in, garbage out. And for example, like when I'm writing Pandas code, I get a lot of notoriety on social media for this style and way that I do that. Some people, it really drives them crazy how some of the techniques that I'm pushing, and generally these tools don't create code in that way. So, or like Pandas code that way, right? Because they haven't. There's not a lot of material to be trained on that creates code in that way. So again, that's one of those reasons why, like, I would want to, if I could, have a personal model on that I could run locally that's been trained on all the code I write and that writes code a little bit different than maybe what's in the public sphere.
Yeah, and there's, just to put something to bed here, there's been a lot, in my view, which I'm not sure, I think you'll agree, Matt, there's been a lot of silly statements around the future of programming, right? To protect the guilty, I won't name them, but I saw a comment on LinkedIn from a very well-known CEO saying that something like 40,000 to a couple 100,000 outsourcing coding jobs are slated to disappear in the next couple of years. I think that's a very misplaced statement, which our discussion today will kind of enlighten hopefully a bit. So putting that aside, what are the skills that we'll get into beginners in a little bit, but seasoned practitioners should be aware of with these AI code assistant tools that they should be paying attention to, because it is a evolving landscape.
That's a great question, and I think my answer might not be exactly what people might be thinking of, but for me, I think the most important skill for a programmer is technical proficiency in their domain, because I really view these right now as more of an augmentation, more of a pair programming type tool that's going to help you And with those hallucinations, if the AI, if this is your skill level and the AI is above your skill level, and it's spitting out code that you're not understanding, you don't know if it's doing the right thing or not. However, if you are an expert and very proficient, again, this is going to be able to offload a lot of the menial tasks, which is a good chunk of what developers do. So sometimes you have deep work, and sometimes it's like, oh, go change this CSS color here, or make this thing rounded instead of curved. Those sorts of tasks, which the AI can do quite well. But if you're not proficient, if you're a complete newbie, I think you're not going to find that useful. It's going to be a challenge for you.
No, and I think that's a great point, because going back to our earlier point about this being a bit of a cottage industry, like those menial tasks, there's so many of those. And then if you look at the whole development stack, from the infrastructure layer to the data layer, backend, middle tier, front end, data visualization, AI can be used, AI code assist can be used at all those different layers, but at the most basic tasks. And sure, it can do something quite sophisticated, but then the coder always has to check that. So I think we're years off that. And then if you look at the job progression of a typical programmer, like going from a junior to a senior programmer to a software architect to a principal architect, because I spent most of my career on the architect side of it, helping other developers. And the teams over the last few decades have only grown larger. Like the software coding role and the programming role has gotten more and more specialized. Like there was no thing when I started developing as a front-end engineer versus a back-end engineer versus infrastructure engineer versus a data architect. So again, like we tend to put a lot of this into a single, hey, it's a programmer bucket. So I really think it can make the role of a programmer, elevated to a different level. So I definitely agree 100% with that. But look, Matt, with your background, you've been teaching, you've been a renowned instructor for quite a number of years. So you also have talked about this, that AI can make programming much more accessible to many more people, even those without a technical background. So how can it help us learn programming? Because this I feel is a bit of a minefield, a lot of different opinions on it. Simple question, but not so.
Yeah. I mean, there's a common question I get, like, how, Matt, help me learn Python, help me learn data science, those sorts of things. And as someone who literally I make my living, I like to say, selling snake oil or teaching people to tell lies with data. Like I teach people how to program in Python, and I teach people how to, manipulate data using generally Python tools. Am I worried that, AI's here, AI will replace me? No, I'm not. The thing is like, there's already too much information out there. Like we have, we have YouTube, we have blogs, we have Twitter, and like I could go and watch all the YouTube videos on Python. There's college courses on there that do that. So I'm not. As far as like being replaced by AI, I mean, if I was already going to be replaced, I already would have been replaced, because there's there's more than enough free information out there for someone who's motivated to self-educate if they want to. For me, the challenge is the path that I'm going on. So as an educator, I want to take someone from a path. And my experience, background in computer science, I worked as a developer and a data scientist for many years before moving into education. So obviously I have a bias, and I have these are the things that, as a Python programmer, I think would be great to know. And so I have a path that I take people on. Will an AI take you down a path? Yeah, it might. I want, again, it comes back to that idea of hallucinations. I want to have curation and a trusted expert to be able to guide me. And an AI might be able to generate a learning path, but if I'm not an expert, I really don't know if it's the right path for me. It's sort of like, again, just going to YouTube and just browsing various Python talks or whatnot. You're going to learn a lot, but there might be a bunch of knowledge gaps in there. So I think we need to be careful about saying that like AI will replace a teacher. For me, the draw there is you have an expert who's curating a path for you. Now, on the flip side is if we like dive into topics or whatnot, right? Certainly we could use AI to say like, I don't understand this concept, maybe explain it to me in simpler terms, or here's an example of data, explain the concept using this data, those sorts of things. AI does a great job there. And I think AI can be used as another tool for someone who's learning. In the past, what have programmers done when they've got stuck on something? They've gone to Google or been routed to Stack Overflow, and that's been their traditional path, right? I'm going to search on Google and see what pops up on Google, or I'm going to go to Stack Overflow and see what's on Stack Overflow. Now we can just throw the error message directly into these models and oftentimes get a decent answer without having to do that. So I think that, as a tool to aid in I guess I should come up with a term of that, right? A term for this. It's not the macro picture that I think AI will disrupt, but it's certainly, again, helping with those micro learning moments along the way.
No, some fantastic points in there, Matt. I was just thinking one of my first talks I gave years ago at a meetup was around what I called copy and paste programmers, giving programmers grief for using Google and Stack Overflow for copying, because I was looking at how lines of code are inserted, and I saw blocks of code and then time spent in blocks of code. I'm like, that's definitely copy and paste, because I was running consultancy and I had a number of teams. I was running a number of projects, and people give me a lot of slack for that. Yeah, no, we're not copy and paste programmers. Now it's accepted practice. And the flip side of that, I saw, a lot of these Q&A coding style platforms, they are being replaced by people asking stuff in ChatGPT. But I absolutely agree with you 100%, because, I've actually done that journey a few times myself, given the context of ODSC. Like, okay, if I'm a beginner, let me say I want to follow a data engineering track or data science or AI, go from zero to hero and be an AI expert. And I've asked ChatGPT and Bard and these other models, like, lay out a learning path for me. And the problem I found was the exact same problem you find when you look at a job description, like what we call these uniform job descriptions, where these companies list off all these programming skills you need, all these math skills, all these model skills, all these data skills, and then all these communication skills. And everything. Like, you end up with what I call a unicorn list. And pretty soon I got this unicorn learning path. I'm like, yeah, I could learn this. I could do all this, but it's going to take me 10 years. Yeah. So I think that's a very astute observation that the learning paths are key. And having said that, lots of companies, online platforms are out there developing these AI-driven learning paths that they can customize, and not taking away from that. But I really believe the human touch and the curation side is key here, because the biggest problem in the tech is and will always be, there's just too much to learn out there, right? So how do you pick your path? And it has to be in your context. What's your passion? What do you want to learn? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. And what's also curious as well, because in my mind, the education stack, the learning stack keeps getting bigger and bigger. It keeps just expanding like the universe. And like the universe, it's increasing in speed. So that's a big concern I have. So, and it's kind of funny that there was a whole, I think after MLOps 3 years ago, machine learning operations, the next big thing was like no code, low code. That was a big thing in 2021 until late 2022. Excuse me. But then ChatGPT definitely took the air out of low code and no code AI, but it is still around. And no code has been a dream for the last many decades.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on the whole low code, no code that many companies are pushing?
Yeah. I think there's a subset of work, of projects, of tasks that can be relegated to low code or no code. However, what I've seen in the past is that oftentimes you're in that subset where it works, and then you're like, okay, we need to do this thing, and at that point, it's either impossible or very difficult, or more difficult than it would have been to sort of do it with code from the start. My first created a BI company many years ago, and the whole point of that company was sales reporting, because these low code BI tools didn't do what they needed them to do, and getting them to do that was kind of difficult. So our client was like, well, we want a tool that does this. And so basically they, customized a tool that allowed them to do exactly what they want. So again, I obviously for someone who's, doesn't have technical chops, you read the sales material about no code or low code, and it sounds great. And again, I think for a small subset, it is great, but at some point you move beyond that area of great, and you get into problems. And again, I think this is comes back to that same idea of it's similar to the notion that I'm going to just, I'm not an expert, but ChatGPT knows how to code, so I'm just going to use ChatGPT to write code for me. I think both of those, just saying, I'm going to outsource my primary business logic to no code, or I'm going to outsource my primary business logic to ChatGPT, is a great way to get started with something. But then, like, when you actually hire a technical person, they're not going to be very happy, and you're probably not going to be very happy, because the technical person's immediately going to say, look, I'm going to throw all this out the window and start from scratch.
No, absolutely agree. And so that leads to a question we touched upon a little earlier. Look, these code assistants, I'm actually surprised. Like some developers take to them like a duck to water, others not so much. But it is going to be a march forward with these AI code assistants. And how do we future-proof our career with these code assistants? Because I'm always trying to future-proof my career, because there's always someone trying to fire me from something for some reason. For example, I don't know why, but it's kind of like a friend of mine had a brother who used to be a personal trainer. He's like, oh, he quit, and now he's doing a different job. I'm like, why? Because he's like, how many times can you count to 12 in your life? Which I thought was funny. But I remember as a programmer after doing that for 7 or 8 years, I'm like, you know what? Coding is great, but I want to get into software architecture. So I took a lot of courses, did a lot of class in software architecture, because I want to kind of go to the next level strategy and all that stuff. So that was kind of my future-proof my career. And we all know how well that worked out. Actually, it worked out pretty well. I had a pretty good consultancy while it lasted. But that was how I future-proofed my career. So what are some of the skills that you believe will become indispensable for programmers in the next decades to future-proof their careers?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we do see in the news, like, big companies plan to replace thousands of jobs with AI, that sort of thing. And again, there's a big company that said they're pausing hiring because AI could do these jobs. So, on that note, like, am I afraid that programming will go away? Am I afraid that all these people who are like my daughter's studying computer science in university right now. Do I think that that's a poor career choice? No, I don't. So first of all, even though AI can do this, someone needs to make the AI do that. And there's a popular meme, I guess, at this point going around social media is that like AI is not going to replace you, but someone who's using AI might replace you. So again, to me, it comes back to I want to be a subject matter expert in my domain and leverage AI as a partner or to augment me. And so I really do want to level up my skills and then augment my skills using AI. The other part of that is, I mean, there has been like this auto GPT or that basically sits in a loop, an infinite loop, and says like, here's my goal, and like just do these tasks until the goal is completed, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, we might get some sort of general AI that is able to do tasks, but I think in the near future we're going to have someone who runs those tasks for us and who monitors them and curates them. So will programming go away? I don't think programming will go away. It might look differently than it does. So to folks who are just getting into industry, this might present a little bit of a challenge because you might have companies that are considering, well, we could hire these fresh grads, but now that we have, these AI tools, we can just sort of tell our more experienced people to create code that fresh grads would get us. So that might be the case. For me, I think the best thing you can do to future-proof yourself is not technical at all. The best thing you can do to future-proof yourself is to have a strong network around you of folks in your industry who you can leverage and work with. And so, in the past, advice I've given to folks that want to sort of future-proof their career or job is start networking with people, right? And you can do this through social media. I posted the other day that like I've used Twitter to get jobs before, and people respond to me like, how's that even possible, right? I've never gotten a job on Twitter. And well, you look at their stream and it's obvious why they haven't ever gotten a job on Twitter. Yeah, you're not going to get a job on Twitter if you don't do things that would get you a job on Twitter. But I think reaching out and networking with others is a great way to future-proof your skills. I think especially in the data realm, this is moving so fast right now. You want to sort of make sure that you have like a pulse on what's happening, what other people are doing, being able, if someone else is doing something, you want to be able to leverage those or take their best practices. And oftentimes as computer people, we tend to work in isolation, or we have this idea that, I'm an introvert. I like to work with computers. That's why I program. I don't have to interact with humans. But to me, the human interaction is really the thing that makes someone, I would say, future-proof.
Yeah, Matt. Again, that's why I love talking to you, because there's so much unwrapped there. Like I want to comment on all of that. Definitely number one on my list is all these companies announcing we're freezing hiring or we're laying off because we're going to have AI doing it. I call bullshit on that, because I know exactly what's happening. Having been in finance and having been a student of the financial markets and investing myself, hey, instead of saying we're having a bad quarter or we made some easy mistakes, let's just blame it on AI.
Yeah.
So I call bullshit in that one, and I dare anyone to.
It's the same thing with return to office, right? I think.
Yeah.
I think you can say, we need everyone else is laying off. We should probably lay off because, you know, it makes our numbers look better. And what's an easy way to do that? Oh, we just say everyone has to return to office, and then that makes it we don't even have to do a layoff.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so God forbid you're working in a company that's doing a return to office and looking to replace you with AI.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, because you really want to be looking at your leadership team if that's the case. And that was number one. Number two, I agree with you, because we look at a lot of data, we pull a lot of data, and it's always amazing that we look at, as part of ODSC, we look at personas around, if you want to be a data engineer, an AI expert, data scientist, machine learning engineer. But it always amazes me, top 10 skill always shows on top is communication skills. Has never changed, will never change. Communication skills, Matt, you have them in buckets. So I think that's another top one. And then your point about how it works, because that's most people's job is understanding how something works, right?
Yeah.
That's mostly my job in tech, is explain to people how something works. And the other thing too is having run a consultancy where I did well over 150 projects across different domains, and still continue to do some machine learning projects. It's like, at the end of the day, like, some days I wake up and I'm like, coding sucks. Like, this whole software development process just seriously sucks, because I do some startup stuff as well, and help some VCs, and it's like, if the next person that tells me it's never been easier to start a company, now you don't even need engineers, you can use AI for it, I want to kill them. Have you ever tried hiring an engineer, an AI expert, what they cost, and what skills that needs to develop? And it's like, so I always feel like the software we're doing, it's we can never build it quick enough, and it's never sophisticated enough, because at the end of the day, it's mostly, as a programmer myself, I'm coding stupid, mundane stuff. I'm just building an interface, doing some very simple stuff, passing data around, running some basic models, even though to outsiders they look pretty sophisticated. So I really think I have huge hope here that we can actually build some pretty damn good software and better software with AI skills. So again, I think that's where, as you were alluding to, and made me think about that, because with some of the skills you mentioned, like, we shouldn't just be thinking about today's world of software, like how are we going to build better software? Because a lot of software today, it's like it's not that great. So I think that's a big thing, and I know you've been an advocate for that for a long time.
Well, that's another issue. Sorry to cut you off again, but if you think about, if software isn't great and these models are trained on software isn't great, what is the code that is coming out of that, right? And so you need to be very careful about where you're sourcing your material from.
Yeah, and I also know I got to be careful what I say, because our communication skills are good, so we always make it look like the software we're doing is great. But we all know as practitioners, we can do better, and we need to do better as we advance this. Because another huge area I'm interested in as well is legacy code. Like, it's impossible to get a developer to work on legacy code, to maintain code. That's boring. No one wants to do it. And there is an ocean of legacy code out there. All kinds of challenges. A huge area of interest to a lot of these VCs and startups out there. But let's move on here, because I know we're having a great conversation. We've got in the interest of time. So, look, Matt, you're a renowned instructor. You've been doing speaking at conferences like ODSC for years, giving training, written a ton of books, given you have your own online and in-person training business as well. So how are you incorporating AI into your, building your courses, given the rapid advances we're seeing?
Yeah. And again, it comes back to this idea of augmentation. So I do a fundamentals of Python course, and oftentimes when we're doing that, we work on this little toy project. It's we basically make like a ChatGPT, but using a Markov chain instead of a large language model. And that's a great project, in that, if you haven't programmed, it's more than like write a function that adds two numbers. It encapsulates a lot of what we learned in the course. It talks about, dictionaries and lists and classes and functions, and then we can do testing and make it into a command line application. And so it's a nice little project to sort of review and show how things work in practice. it is possible. I've gone through that project and I've completely like, oh yeah, can I do this with chat, right? Or can I have a tool automate and write all this code for me? Yeah, and I've done it, and because the project is small, right, it sort of fits into the context or the memory of the system, and you're able to do that. However, again, to me, using AI to do that, like say, okay, now we're going to do the final project and we'll just do it with chat. Don't think that's useful for someone who's starting out there. So, I make these folks aware that these tools exist if they're not, because sometimes people coming into these beginner classes aren't really aware that like they can do that sort of thing. But at this point in my career, where I'm at is probably a little bit different than a lot of the audience. I am creating a lot of content, so writing books, writing courses, and doing coding. Like I said, I gave that example of like mapping countries to continents that just happened this week. So I'm going to use ChatGPT or other tools to augment that, right? So I'll admit, like, do I use these tools for content generation? Yeah, I do. Do I just take what comes out of that content and use that directly? No, I don't. So generally, it's going to go through an edit process. So I see a lot of maybe the question of like how things might change in the future. It also comes down to I'm becoming more of an editor, so to speak, than the creator for some things. And again, like, if I can have a tool write me 2 paragraphs in 30 seconds versus taking whatever the 5 or 10 minutes that does, and it looks okay, I might need to tweak things here or there, that might be a win for me. But we also need to be careful about, like, I'm saying, okay, now I want you to write this paragraph or piece of code, and it doesn't do it quite right. And then instead of us just taking it out of the system and fixing it, we spend a lot of time back and forthing with the machine to try and get the machine to give us the right answer. In that case, it can be more of a drag or distraction than an augmentation there.
Yeah, and one question I want to kind of the last few questions I want to wrap up, and it's like we had a few interviews over the summer around the ethical considerations of AI and generative AI and fair use and copyright, and it's an interesting topic when it comes to code and code reuse and AI code assistance, because ODSC, Open Data Science Conference, started with the whole concept of the heroes in our community are people who are both providing the knowledge like yourself, as well as the contributors to open source, building these tools, writing all this code, making it available for everybody. And so on one hand, they put in tremendous time and effort to doing that. Now along comes these models to train on that. And on one hand, you can say, well, this is great. So I'm continuing to use the benefits of open source to help me code myself, which kind of to a certain degree was always the case anyway, because apart from Stack Overflow, the place I got lots of coding techniques and understood what was going on was looking at open source and studying it and contributing a bit myself. So that's one way of looking at it, whereas others, people are looking like authors and musicians are saying, no, this is not fair use. Even though the law may say it's fair use, ethically it's not fair use. And there was a lawsuit last November. Somebody was, I think it was a lawyer who was also a programmer, suing Microsoft and OpenAI and all of them. I don't know what the result is. They were still in play or whatever. But that's one way of looking at the ethical use of it. The other one is, you mentioned already, Matt, bias and fairness. That comes around hallucinations, like all kinds of issues, and then dependency and automations. But yeah, what's your bit of a minefield, but what's your take on all this stuff?
Yeah, so caveat, I'm not a lawyer, so yeah, we could do a whole session.
I'm not, but I have a chat model that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So as someone who creates content, right, and someone who's written multiple books, I'm certainly sensitive to these notions of piracy and people taking your content. Like, people have taken my content and republished my books and stolen my books and done all sorts of things with my books, right? And that's really painful when you put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in it. However, on the other hand, we can say that, like, how do people learn, right? People learn generally by people showing them some code, and then people, basically copying and pasting that code. And then you can go down this rabbit hole of, okay, well, if you have a model and it's trained on GPL code, right? And GPL is this license that's viral. It says that, if you use this code, then your code has to be GPL'd as well. You have to release it under that same license. How do I know that these models aren't giving me back out GPL'd code, so to speak? So yeah, certainly, like you said, this is a minefield. I don't have hard answers for that right now. On one hand, the cat is out of the bag. Like, these technologies do exist. And I can see both sides, right? Where it's like, yeah, if I say, like, okay, I want to write a word processor and the tool spits out the source code for Word, yeah, that would be problematic. Hopefully it wouldn't do that. However, if it has seen multiple open source projects that have editing buffers, and also seen projects that have buttons that allow you to do click and undo, and is able to sort of tie parts of those together or extract parts of those together into a coherent program. And the licensing is okay.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to speak to all contributors, but the few I have spoken to about it, I've been surprised by the result, because for the most part, they're like, actually, I'm going to use a code assist to help me do my open source contributions. You kind of have this feedback loop effect. But they're looking at it as a positive way, because it is time consuming. So that's going to be interesting to play out here. And I think as we work in more of some kind of an acknowledgement system, I think that can go a long way as well. But wrapping this up a little bit, any future predictions on where we're going to with this? And I think the one I think our audience will be most interested in is, as again, I know we've touched upon this, but we talked more about as a junior developer programmer or a beginner programmer. Like, what is this going to look at in 5 years or 10 years? Because I definitely have some opinions on that, probably wrong ones. But yeah, so let's play the unplayable. What are the future predictions, Matt?
Yeah. So as a junior person, if you feel like AI is pushing you out of the job, again, you're going to have to do the things that AI doesn't do. So AI doesn't have human interaction. AI doesn't network with other people. AI doesn't generally be proactive and ask questions and go out of the way to help folks. It just sort of does what it does. So if you're the sort of person who just does what someone tells you to do, yeah, maybe you can be outsourced by AI. So that would be my hint for junior folks. Again, make yourself resilient, do the things that AI doesn't do. As far as like where these models will go, I mean, they're improving, right? I think I'm relatively confident with like these llama models and whatnot. We'll be able to, I mean, right now you can already run things on your laptop, but I think that will come down to probably running things on your phone or running local models that are highly tuned to your output, or maybe they'll be local to you, but in the cloud somewhere. Also, again, for me, one of the key places of innovation is, I guess, interfaces on top of that, which I guess is what most of these AI companies are doing. They're wrapping up, these APIs and giving you a better interface that's more streamlined. So for programmers and data scientists and data engineers, really want to see more streamlined use of that in sort of your Jupyter or your code editor, and be a little bit more smart than they are right now. I think we're just seeing sort of the tip of the iceberg as to how these can help us with our productivity. Also, I think, right now we're sort of saying, do this for me, right? So we're telling them to do jobs, but I think, again, as far as productivity and for programmers, what would be nice is sort of these prescriptive things as well. A lot of time is spent doing code reviews when you get into larger companies, right? And people back and forthing on your code. So, if you have an AI that can nip a lot of those and get a lot of that done for you earlier, that's going to save a ton of money and a ton of time for everyone involved.
Yeah, great insights, Matt. I would say my simple prediction would be come to ODSC and learn AI. Visit metasnake.com and learn programming from Matt. And I predict your future will be both interesting and rewarding.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to head out to ODSC West and see, again, what people are doing with these tools, right? That they're making the interfaces that will actually be more useful and streamlined for us.
Yeah, no, a very heavy program and agenda around LLMs and Gen AI, and also, Matt, you'll be making a massive contribution there. And everyone, Matt, best way to follow your work. I know we've got your Metasnake store there to purchase some of your courses and books. But
yeah, I've got a mailing list at metasnake.com. You can go there. I'm on main social media, Twitter __M_Harrison__ Python Dunder M Harrison reference there, and also on LinkedIn as well. So those are the main places where I hang out. So
Matt, thank you so much once again for being a great guest, for speaking at ODSC, and I will see you in 7 or 8 short weeks.
It's my pleasure. Yeah. Thanks again.
Soon.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. So just wrapping up the show. Once again, thank you so much. We have another interview coming up, and we're going to take a break next week as I'm traveling. Then we'll be back the week after, but we do have a bunch of webinars coming up. And do remember the latest best price for ODSC West is available. It's ending next Friday, so do check that out. We have our boot camp going on, training passes, as well as AIX for those of you business-minded folks. And I also have a number of free courses I'm teaching with either an AI Plus subscription or an ODSC pass. We just completed the SQL data wrangling yesterday. We've done the data course. They're both available now on demand. And I think in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing a Python programming course. Then I'll be doing data wrangling with Python. And then we have a AI primer, and that'll be followed by a large language model, prompt engineering, and LangChain agent course as well. So we've got a lot coming up over the autumn/fall period. So again, thank you for tuning in, and have a fantastic weekend. Bye for now.